Everyone, welcome back. I see again lots of familiar faces. We're excited to learn and grow more with you tonight. So again, my name is Lauren Heinbach, and I'm the Director of Community Experience at Selected. We're hosting you tonight. And yeah, since most of you were here last night, I'm going to keep it super brief, but just as a friendly reminder, a little bit about Selected. So Selected is an online platform that is free for teachers to use. Essentially, it's for job-seeking teachers to find potential right-fit schools. And the way you do that is you take about 5 to 10 minutes to create a free profile, and from there, you get schools to apply to you instead of the other way around. Typically, folks get 1,005 schools on average within their first week. And we also provide free support to those teachers throughout the interview process with our partner schools. At this point in time, we have a little over 800 schools. They're public bodies, like districts and charters. We also have independent schools and religious schools and those private schools available. So really to fit all different types of folks. And we're able to filter your matches to see which ones are culture fits, depending upon what you're most interested in and what you value most in the school. The idea being that teachers who are well matched to a school are happier and stay longer and are more effective. So that's what we're all about. And from there, let's go ahead and get started for the night. Again, this is our lovely host Liz, and she's also a coach with us. Super talented.
A very exciting topic. Resumes. Who's excited? It's hard to get excited about resumes, so I don't blame you. This is me. I've been working in New York City schools for 10 years. I've done a lot of recruiting, instructional coaching, and teaching in public and district schools and in charter schools. By the way, cropped out of this picture is my daughter. I'm 17-month-old. Oh, yes, she's very, very cute. I should have kept her in there, and you would have done that regularly. So, this is sort of an icebreaker. I like to just start off by asking you what's frustrating about resumes, or either writing your own resume or just resumes in general. Maybe just talk to me about this. Anyone want to share out something that their partner said?
Maybe just discussing the rest of the resolution, one page or 2 pages.
2 pages is fine.
Yeah. Just generally no longer than that.
Right. Right. And most of the time, as long as it's not. We haven't seen a lot of great resumes that are longer than 2 pages, right? It can be tricky. Anything else?
I think it's difficult for those of us who are second career people because we've had 20 years of experience already. We're not just starting out. So what if that is relevant? How many years of experience is relevant?
Great. Anything else? Okay. So we will be covering both of those topics tonight. There's a lot more frustrating things about resumes to me. I mean, for me, I think the most difficult part is just finding different words to say, like teach. Finding different synonyms. You're basically saying a lot of the same things over and over again, but you don't want to repeat and use the same language. So that's one of the most key parts. And also just the idea that this is like you think of it as your one hand, right? So this is where it falls in the candidate process, right almost at the top. So the resume screen is going to come right after the application if there is one. Sometimes there isn't. Basically, your resume is going to be in a stack of other resumes, either in an inbox or digitally or an actual physical stack of papers. And your job is just to basically not get eliminated from the stack. And we'll talk about that. So this is the agenda of what we're going to be covering tonight. We're going to start out by just talking about, the basics of a resume, what it is, what it's used for, and then we're going to look at some resumes together and just talk about what's going to get them eliminated, what's not going to get them eliminated, and then we'll go into our own resumes, which I hope you brought. Did you bring your resumes? Okay. Well, your question?
I was just wondering, are we going to talk about the cover letter?
Not tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. No, a couple of people were asking about that yesterday. It's just, it's a whole other session probably. We can answer questions about it though. Can I weigh in on that? I mean,
The cover letter? Yeah, I mean, it's important for those processes that require one. Certainly unselected actually,
you don't even need one.
Yep.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you don't even need one unselected.
Yeah, unselected because you basically already have an in with that partner school by being signed up with us. You don't actually need a cover letter in most instances. So really, as long as you have a solid resume, you're all set.
The resume is much more important than the cover letter. So then we're gonna go over our own resumes, and then we'll just go over some just other advice and resources for you. Wants to read it. We did this last night. We'll do it again. The bravest person in the room is.
Used to secure objective is not gonna.
Boom. So literally, that's exactly what it is. So either you're going to be yes or no at this point. So your job is just don't do anything that's going to get you eliminated from the stack, and that part is actually relatively easy. And we'll talk more. We'll talk about how to not. It is subjective. There are going to be hiring managers that are looking for more specific things. Some of them might be sticklers for grammar. Some of them might be sticklers for formatting. Some of them might be sticklers for language. But there are certain things that are always going to be consistent, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. The goal. That's easy, right? It's not. It's not easy. Okay, so we're actually going to look at some resumes. If you, I know that this is on the cover, this is the next session, but the second page, who doesn't have one of these, by the way? Okay. So the second page, this is going to be the first resume that you're going to look at. So this is a, sorry, and these are not real people. Well, this one actually doesn't even have a name on it, but this comes from, all the material comes from real resumes. This is a relatively new graduate of an undergraduate program. They've been out of school for 2 years, and they've been teaching full time. They don't have a master's degree in teaching, but they are enrolled in a program to obtain one. Okay? So just take 1 minute and just look at the resume, just this one that says 1A at the top, and just think about these questions. What do you like about the resume? What do you dislike? Would you hire this person? And maybe just, would it be a yes or would it be a no? Okay, so just 1 minute. I actually heard a lot of great thoughts, and I'm excited to hear what you think. Some over here especially. Just any thoughts on, any answers to actually any of the questions? Okay, did everyone hear her? I'll say again.
The objective is not good.
Anyone else thinking that? Okay.
Why was not?
Yeah.
They obviously need help.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a little
Right.
desperate, right? Any apple do? Yeah, not specific.
What else?
I thought the list of activities, these activities belong on the resume and all, they certainly don't belong so high up because they don't really suggest any job-related skills or qualifications. They're pretty old.
What are they related to?
Sorry?
What are they related to? Is there anything, any mention of any kind of teaching skills?
Well, some of them I don't even understand what they mean. They represent the high school and styles.
Really? I mean, great, but, okay, what else?
It was kind of good.
Mhm.
And just related to what you were just saying, absolutely. You want your education related content to be definitely towards the top of your resume, Because I'll tell you this, the statistic is most hiring managers spend 6 seconds on average reviewing a given resume. And so
That is
6
bananas.
seconds. So what you want to do, among other things, is make sure that anything related to the education degree that you have, any teaching experience you have, particularly if you're a career switcher, is towards the top of your resume. And we'll tell you more about how.
If you were to look at this resume for 6 seconds, would it be clear that anything about this woman, person?
Or that she's a teacher.
That she's a exactly, even that she's a teacher, right? I heard somebody saying that over here. You're like, is she a teacher? This is a teaching resume. It's not clear. So her experience at Uncommon is there it is, right here. This is normally where you put like skills and awards, right? Or hobbies, interests. Okay, what else? Don't be shy. This is not a good resume. Lauren was like breaking out in hives when she looked at it. She's like, I can't.
And I'll help you.
Yeah.
Kind of following up on what you're saying about her actual work experience, you don't get a good idea of what she did do at Uncommon School for
Yeah,
2 years.
right.
Whereas if you're half years now, you know,
There's a lot of teaching that happens in 2 years.
yeah, what classes was she teaching, what grade level, what she do, what curriculum, all the functions of a teacher are not on.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Technology, you know, a lot of telephone,
Right.
and that everybody is saying. Private keyboard, assisting office, unnecessary, so there's development, patterns, everything.
Exactly. Not necessary. So one of the very first things that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that all of our information is front and center, like Lauren was saying. You're going to have, we'll talk about objectives, you might probably won't even need one, but your education, your teaching experience, and your certification should be front and center on your resume. That's the first thing. That's the first thing that's going to get you eliminated. Anything else, Lauren, before I move on? We're going to look at a second one.
No.
Okay. Ready for the second one? So is this yes or no? No. It's not making a touch. Okay, so,
The thing is, they might be a fantastic teacher.
right. If they taught Uncommon for 2.5 years, if they made it through that, then they're probably a pretty good teacher. So this teacher is also somewhat of a recent grad, but just a little bit different, you'll see. They have a total of 4 years of full-time teaching, and they do have a master's degree. So take a minute, why don't we do 2 minutes together to read it and review it with a partner. Same question. All right, I'm gonna set the timer. You can start.
So yeah, pretend you're the hiring manager of the campus.
Yes.
Okay. Thoughts on this resume? It's a little better, right?
Are we looking at this 2016 or are we looking at this 2009, January 2019?
What? We're looking at this in, oh, that's a great question. I never thought of that. In 2016. Yeah, let's just see. Let's get in our time machine. Thoughts?
I'm concerned about the time that she works as a classroom teacher.
Okay, that's a good point. Anything else? What's good about this resume? What's better about this resume? Hmm? Hmm? What about aesthetically, just visually? Yeah. Is it easier, which one's easier to read? Yeah, this is like, Marie Kondo would be like really into this one more than the other one. That's my first Marie Kondo joke, but probably not my last. What else? What's good? What works about it?
Oh, I'm interested in the education services. We were wondering at the bottom, honestly, when I saw the law stuff, I was like, started reading it. But then later, just by accident, saw that there's like a New York City Department of Editing at the very bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Since this person's writing in chronological order,
Mm-hmm.
how do you bump that up? Because
That's
it's
an
related
excellent
to teaching and it got lost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a completely different skill than what's listed at the top.
So what I was gonna say, and I don't know if Lauren would agree with this, but I would bump the law firm's listings down and write it under other experience. I don't know if you have different ideas about that.
Yeah, so to the point around career switchers and whatnot, here's what you want to do. You want to have two different experience sections. Have one, just how it says experience right now, write teaching experience or instructional experience if you need it to be a bit more broad. List out, still chronologically, all of the relevant teaching related positions and experience that you've had. Even if some of them were volunteer based, it's fine. And then put additional professional experience as a separate section. Does that make sense? Okay, I think you had a comment.
What I liked is that they put their master's degree certification at the top.
Yeah, although, quick comment there too. Remember, a lot of them are only taking 6 seconds. So really, it's even better if you have a separate subsection that says certifications.
As a heading.
So that as a heading, because they're first going to be skimming the headings. And if they don't need to dig further to know whether or not you're certified, that's perfect. Say you're not completed with your certification just yet, for the date, but expected in, and then they give you expected to receive it. So that way they know you're on a path to certification.
If they're a district school, probably the first thing I'm looking for is if you're certified. Charter schools can hire you if you're not certified, but they still have to have a certain percentage of teachers that are certified. If it's a private school, it doesn't matter, but everybody usually prefers certified teachers. One more thing before we move on is just, you may have noticed that this is in sort of a paragraph form. It's more visually appealing and it's easier to read at several points. It's not terrible like this, but wouldn't you rather read something that was bullet pointed? It's like you don't got time for that, right? Okay.
Sorry, 2 other quick things. So someone asked what subsection means. So see where it says experience? That would be a subsection. So you might want to have, like I was saying before, instead of it saying experience, write teaching experience, and then have several different positions related to that there. And then right under it, have another in bold and caps section called just additional professional experience. Okay? The other thing that is missing on this resume is related to skimmability, if you will. So they list classroom teacher, but they don't say fourth grade math teacher, for example. That would have been a whole lot better, instead of me having to dig into the paragraphs, or the hiring managers dig into the paragraphs to find out that information. Make it skimmable.
Could be the word of the night.
In terms of teachers who are like 10 years or more experience, is it better to put the employment or the, employment first? Or do you like prefer having education?
So I would say if you are earlier career teacher, particularly if you have not had a full-time teaching position yet, you want your education to definitely come first. If you're a more veteran teacher, say 10 plus years of experience, I think it's totally fine to have that come at the bottom.
But just the certification.
But still certification on the top.
Okay. Which of these teachers would you rather hire? Raise your hand if you would rather hire teacher number 1. Teacher number 2. I figured. Just a quick check for understanding. So I just found out something really interesting. Literally, while you were all talking, both of those, I don't know if you knew this, Lauren, both of those teachers were real teachers and they were both hired or selected. And, but this is, so they were coached on their resume. The first teacher was obviously provided coaching from one of our, I don't know which coach it was, but.
What you said was not the product of
Right,
coaching.
that was before they got the coaching on their resume. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
One of the many services Selected provides. Okay, the next section we're going to talk about, we're going to go into our own resume. So if you have a resume, take it out or pull it up on your computer. If you don't, then you're going to start writing one. You're like,
Now's the time to do it though, you all.
now,
Those are all right here.
we started interviewing in February. Okay. So we talked about the philosophy of the model resumes. The first thing you want to prioritize is your certification. Most public schools, district schools, that's the first thing that they're going to look at. They want to see if you're certified. So even if you're not, you haven't quite finished the EdTPA, I can't, don't even start with the EdTPA. They didn't have that when I got my certification. But I've heard it is a nightmare, and I'm so sorry for all of you if you're going through that right now. If you're still,
To the creators of EdTPA.
what?
No offense to the creators.
Yeah. I just assumed there weren't any creators of EdTPA in the audience. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's going to do wonders. I hear it's not so easy. So if you are in process of receiving your certification, just make that crystal clear at the top. What you're getting certified in. What type of certification, if it's permanent or initial or what's the third one called? Provisional. What state the certification is in, and when it expires. All of that information should be right at the top of your resume. No, any questions about that?
And usually the way you see that written is, for example, in Lawrence math, it would be New York math in parentheses 7 to 12 under that certification.
The grades. I forgot to say the grades. That's very important. Why? The grades that you're certified in. Right. If they're looking for a 7th grade math teacher, they want to know if you're certified to teach 7th grade math, right? Your education and academic background should be right at the top also. And then your teaching experience. And don't worry, we'll talk. Okay, so this is optional. A lot of teachers and just on resumes in general write an objective. Sometimes, honestly, I don't know how you feel about this part. It can do more harm than good, in my experience, because it's just sometimes this long rambling statement that just sort of reiterates everything that's on your resume anyway. It's not really necessary. If you want, you can include a summary that's just like a one sentence. This is an example of one. It just summarizes your priorities as a teacher. If you're comfortable doing it, if you're not, it's not really necessary. Thoughts on that?
I mean, it can be nice, but it's definitely not necessary.
If, in other words, if it's not great, it's gonna kind of like cheapen. Yes, it's gonna detract from your resume. I said cheapen. Detract is a better word. Any questions about that?
I mean, how do you know what makes it objective and what doesn't?
It's things like what type of position are you looking for, maybe a little bit about your teaching philosophy, pedagogical practices, things of that sort. Yeah.
But that you can include in a summary. I feel like the objective tends to be a lot longer and more involved.
Yeah, I would skip the objective and if anything, go straight for a brief 1 to 2 sentence top summary.
If you feel like it's something that you need to say, don't do it just to do it. If you have something that you really want to, you know what I mean? If you have something that you really want to brag about, something that makes you really special that's not on your resume, then you should do it. Any other questions?
I feel like I'm pretty equal in all these three categories in terms of like prioritize. Like I feel like I have quite a few like working certification, education methodology, and I've had less than 10 but like close to 10 years in teaching. So like I like which one do I do first?
Yeah, I would personally, I would still do certification, education, whatever education degrees you have, and then your teaching experience. As long as your teaching experience makes it to the first page, if assuming you want to pages, makes it that you have actual teaching experience or student teaching. Maybe you want to list your student teaching if you are a newer teacher, and maybe you don't have as much classroom experience for that. If you've been teaching for longer than, I'd say, 2-3 years, you can probably skip your student teaching. Does that make sense? Definitely not.
For teaching experience, should we include our student teaching?
I would do that if you have not been teaching for longer than about 2 to 3 years. So if you're a very new teacher, that you don't have full-time paid teaching experience yet, absolutely put it up there.
What about subbing?
Subbing in the same boat, yes. If you don't have longer than 2 to 3 years of full-time paid teaching experience.
So should we do both? Like if we're, say we just finished our
We just
student teaching and we're doing subbing
Totally.
right now.
Include anything that shows that you have worked directly with K-12 students or whatever grade levels, please put it on there. That'll make a difference. Yeah.
Keep certification at the top for resume stuff.
Yeah. It's still good for them to see that you made that investment.
In your resume, you don't generally change for the different positions, whether they're public or private school. Cover letter you might change, but resume not really.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
If my teaching experience is more like a career change, so I was teaching adults for 10 years, but now I'm shifting to childhood education. So I was wondering, should I keep the resume to 1 page and have a functional resume? For example, like for over here, eliminate the law firm experiences.
Yeah.
I wouldn't eliminate the adult teaching experience. I mean, that's,
I think she's asking if she should help. Sorry, did you say that you have law experience or you're giving an example of what you would do?
Yeah, like over here, I was thinking, now you mentioned the law firm experience.
Yeah, so here's the thing, particularly if you're a career switcher, generally speaking, you don't want there to be a gap on your resume, an employment gap on your resume. So for anything you've done, say post-college anyhow. But what I would do is make sure that if it's not teaching related, still list it, but use no more than 1 bullet point to describe your primary functions there. You want to give the most visual weight to the teaching related items.
does everyone feel okay about their formatting changes? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next section. It is currently, just giving you time, if you're one of those people that is anxious about time like I am, we, I think, started at 15, it's an hour and 15 minutes long. We're definitely gonna get a 15-minute break, do not worry. But I wanna keep going so that we can move on to the next section, which is language, grammar, and punctuation. If there is a language, grammar, punctuation error on your resume, and they notice it, you're gonna get eliminated. So if you, so don't do it. The easiest way to avoid this is just by having as many people review it as possible. I mean, we make mistakes all the time, right? And you don't notice it because you're reading it as if you're yourself. You wrote it, so how are you gonna notice any errors? So I would have at least 2 proofreaders. If you're going, this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make on their resume. If you're going to use a period at the end of each bullet point, just be consistent about it. My recommendation is that you don't, because they're bullet points. I mean, generally they're not complete sentences, right? But if they are and you want to use a period at the end, great. Just do it for all of them. Spelling, I mean, the computer obviously does that for you. And also avoid repetition as much as possible. Try not to use the same words over and over and over again. Try to use different language. So what we're going to do now, I'm sorry that I'm sort of rushing through this part, but this is the part that's a little bit more intuitive. We're going to exchange resumes. We're just going to look at grammar, punctuation, and language. Any questions about that? We're basically proofreading our partner's resume. Okay. So I'm going to do 3 minutes this time because that seemed like the right amount of time, and then I'll check in and get that. I would recommend having at least one more person review your resume if you haven't already. Not right now, but later for grammar and punctuation. If not, I would honestly do like maybe more than 4, just because sometimes people just miss things over and over again, and why not, right? So the next section, this is the hard part, okay? The content. This is the meat of your resume. This is the most difficult part by far. We're going to talk about exactly how to structure your resume to make it much more simple. This is just sort of a guideline. If you already have something on your resume that's working for you, you don't need to follow this. But this is just a rough guideline. When you're in doubt and you don't know what to put for your 3 bullet points, something about curriculum, something about your background and the way that you feel about the way that students, not the way you feel, but your influences of how students learn and what curriculum you use. Something about instruction and the way that that's implemented in your classroom, and or planning, the way you plan your lessons, and then something about behavior and student discipline. What systems you use, what structures you use, just what you're providing kind of a snapshot for them of what it's like in your classroom on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Where would that go in the lineup of things?
What do you mean? Oh,
Under a specific job or
under each, yes. So if it says like PS 22 first grade teacher, 3 bullet points, and then this would be a description of each. Yes.
I didn't notice in our school I'm working at right now, they're always asking for volunteers to be on some committee, do something to help the school. Do people care about that? Should I say, I work on our prom committee, or I help draft disciplinary?
Please put that on there.
Additional responsibilities.
Yeah, or you could just have your a bullet about those exact things you've done. They want to know, are you a teacher who is going to go above and beyond? Right? What is the additional value add that you're going to provide to their school? Beyond just the traditional being in the classroom, which obviously is important, but how else can they lean on you to help them have kids have the best experience possible at their school? Please, yeah, definitely put that.
I have a question about language as far as like passive voice or active voice. Like if you're talking about something you did in the past, like you administered, like managed, like something with ED, that's like passive voice. but like maybe I want to be more like activating, like what,
For your current position.
how would I address that?
I mean, I would agree, the current position generally is more active language, right? And
So, yes, for your current position or positions, for past positions, you still want each of those verbs that start at the beginning of each bullet to be in past tense.
Okay.
You still do. It's usually because again, they're skimming, so they'll be like skimming through those verbs.
Is there a cutoff date for what you include with experience, like in past 10 years?
No, so personally, I would still recommend that you include all of it, although for your most recent and relevant positions that you've held, that's where you want to spend, say, 5 to 7 tops bullet points explaining those. For ones that are further down on your resume, three to 5 tops. If it's like, if you can't get away with that and still include everything that you've done, do 1 bullet point for those ones. Again, it's about that visual weight distribution.
Like a timeline, like where's the cutoff the experience that you have? Like I think I heard some other seminar 10 years, like I don't know how to.
Less true in the education sector because you don't want folks to think that you just weren't working before that point in time. And they're going to think, well, what were you doing? But I would say if it's prior to college, if it's like high school type things, yeah, I would. Especially if it's not relevant.
also at some point you can take your student teaching experience off. After you've had a few different jobs, you can take your student teaching experience off. Unless you're really proud of it or something really special about it. Okay, so this is
I was like, please tell me this.
this is what's really gonna take you above and beyond. And this is not, it's not super common, but this is what's gonna take you to the next level as far as just the way to explain your position. And I have an example of it in the next slide, don't worry. It's basically if you include within your description of your teaching job a problem that arose in the classroom or in the school, what your solution was, and then what the result of that was. It's not very common, I mean, right, especially with new teachers, but it really, really sets you apart. So, do you want to see some examples? Okay. Good, let me show them. Who wants to read the four? I'll read the four examples. Somebody else can read the better example. On 9th grade English and writing curriculum. Super common. I feel like I've seen many resumes that say something along. What about the better example? Who wants to read it?
Analyzed and rewrote 9th grade English 1 and Reading 1 curricula for 850 students, which contributed to a 20% increase in English 1 district standardized test scores in 2016-2017.
So the problem, sorry, I'll get back to the problem, solution, and result. So let's find the problem, solution, and result. What do you think? They don't state what the problem is clearly, but we can sort of infer. What's the problem? Yep.
Quantitative data.
Solution? How do they solve the problem? Let's go with the curriculum. Mm-hmm. And what does that say about this person? So what does it say about the person that they saw that there was a problem, that the curriculum wasn't working for their students, and they rewrote the curriculum? Right?
I remember yesterday we talked about ownership, right? They took ownership over their problem because they were investing.
Even if it was a school, we don't even know, this might be the school's decision. We don't know, but it sounds like it was the teacher's decision. You're like, wow, good job. Way to tackle that problem. And then what was the result of the solution? They rewrote the curriculum, so what happened? Yeah. So what, I mean, does this sound like a candidate that you would want to hire? If you were a principal, definitely, right? And the thing that's great about the position that you're in right now is show of hands for who's a new teacher or hasn't started teaching yet. Most of you, right? So the great thing about this is you can start teaching this. Now that you're thinking this way, you can start teaching this way and go throughout your day and just start thinking in terms of what are the problems that I see? How am I attempting to solve them? And what are the results?
And even while you're student teaching, I'm sure most of you are measuring the progress, the quantitative progress of your students, even just on the objective for the day, right? So to be able to say that on average, your students increase their mastery of objectives by 20%, whatever it happens to be, then definitely include that. Hiring managers love to see numbers, their objective evidence of impact on students. Anywhere you can include that is really helpful.
I would say, I mean, that's really for the interview. I mean, you can do it if it's something that's short and sweet and to the point, but they'll ask you that in the interview probably, so you can explain it then. You don't want it to be too long.
That's what you would want to explain during it.
Right. I mean, you can if you want to, if there's a quick and easy way of doing it, but resume is really just, it's a snapshot. Any more questions about this? Yes.
Not quite, but just a comment. For those who missed the interview techniques, this is also a great way to answer any kind of interview question. Because you will be asked, say something you're proud of. What did you do at your last school? That's saying a problem, my solution, and what happened or what other people said about it. That's a great way to answer.
Thank you. It aligns with a lot of what we talked about yesterday. Problem, solution, result. Okay, so we're gonna actually, there's no slide for this. We're gonna attempt to do this on our own resumes, not on other people's resumes. Just this is your own work for yourself. And if you're somebody that did Frank's resume, I would really attempt to do this part. Just even if it's super, super rough, just start thinking in terms of the content of your resume, problem, solution, and result. Okay? So let's take 5:26. Okay, we don't have much time. Let's take 2 to 3 minutes and just attempt to start writing some content. These are just some basic, just overall, like sort of do's and don'ts. Don't include references. Don't use the first person. You don't need personal information. This says stick to 1 to 2 fonts max. 1 I think is better. If the 2 fonts work really well together, that's fine. But we shouldn't even notice that there's 2 fonts. I have room as well. Yeah.
No, I mean, if you're going to use a different font, if you're going to use 2 fonts, then one of them should be for just like the headline sections, and the rest for everything else. But generally speaking, it's better, less dangerous to just stick to 1.
And we've already talked about 1 to 2 pages. It should be reviewed by at least 2 people. If you go to Selected to our website, there's a tab at the top that says, what does the tab say? It says something, resume review.
All right, so real quick, here's how this works. All right, on your last page, under where it says resume advice, you have 2 options. If you are someone who is looking for a school for next year, or even right now, I would just go to the regular Selected website, getselected.com, and hit the sign up button, because then you'll get automatic resume feedback as you apply. And you can get deeper, individualized support on your resume. Now, if you're not in that place just yet to be looking for a position, maybe that'd be a couple years out, whatnot, go to this website that I have listed here, getselected.com/teacher-resume-review. You're just gonna upload your resume in its current format. It does not need to be anywhere near perfect. That's the whole point. And we will get back to you within 1 business day with suggestions for you on how to take it to the next level. All right? Whereas if you sign up for Selected with that sign up button, you get assigned an actual coach who you can lean on for support for free throughout the whole interview process. Questions?
Okay, so the next session, we'll do 15 minutes. The next session is on finding your school fit. It's going to be shorter. This is a little bit fun. Also, but the next session is a lot shorter. I wish that I had this information. I think it would be really helpful to you. Just basically on what to look for, who you are as a teacher, and what to look for in a school. Our goal, again, is to reduce teacher turnover, so it's going to be super helpful to you. 15 minutes from now is 5:48. Okay? So I'll see you in 15 minutes. All right, everybody, welcome back. This next session is on finding your school fit. Okay, so this is really, in my opinion, you should start to research the school way at the beginning. I mean, you can apply to as many schools as you want, right? But it takes a lot of time. The schools that you actually take the time to send your resume to are generally schools that you feel like you're a match with. So this is going to take place early on in the process. There's 3 basic types of schools. There's lots of types of schools, but there's 3 general types of schools. There's district schools, which are publicly funded and publicly run, charter schools, which are publicly funded and privately run, but they do usually have some private endorsements, and then independent schools, which are privately funded and privately run. And we have all 3 types of schools on Selected. There's a lot of benefits to each one of them, which I'd be happy to talk about in detail with you. School culture is, who would like to read this? Super important.
School culture can be defined as the traditions, beliefs, policies, and norms within a school that can be shaped, enhanced, and maintained through the school's principals and teachers' years.
So why would school culture be important? Before we move on, any ideas? Exactly. Anything else? Why? I mean, go ahead.
Because you are going to provide the principals and also the school have their own set of rules. So the principals are the rules and they have their own.
Definitely. Anything else? If they're not working, it's really throwing me off, guys. I don't know why it's not working. Okay, so these are just there are a ton of factors that influence school culture, but this is just some of them. Okay, so leadership style and systems, right? Aesthetics of a school. This is something that teachers often don't pay attention to when they go to interview at a school. If you go to a school and it is pristine and beautiful, that's fantastic. There's obviously very high expectations for teachers. But think about the expectations for teachers, right? That takes a lot of work. That is a great thing. It's a great place to learn. But you want to remember, if you see a perfectly pristine school, everything is in place, the teachers are the ones that did that work. And that's the expectation, right? At the same token, if you go into a school and there's garbage all over the floor and the bulletin boards haven't been updated in 6 months, same thing, right? The expectations are very low for teachers, or the administration is so busy and stressed out that they don't care. That's also not a great sign. Teacher autonomy. Are you the kind of teacher that wants to be left alone, or are you the kind of teacher who needs a lot of support? These are all things that you can find out before you accept the job.
Talk a little bit about the leadership style.
Yes, so generally, leadership is going to vary a lot from school to school. And it also depends on school types. So if you're at a charter school, believe it or not, the expectations are just as high, and it actually can be even more cutthroat than district schools. The difference is, at a charter school, there's no union. So the expectations are super high, and you can also not be asked to return. So the leadership style, there's a lot of different factors that will influence it. It's basically like what's influencing the leadership. Is their school going to get shut down, right? If it's a charter school, they can get shut down at any moment. So district schools, it's not as common. So are they under a ton of pressure? If so, where's that pressure coming from, and how does it influence the way that they're interacting with teachers? Are they looking for test scores? If it's a private school, maybe they're looking for project-based learning. Maybe they're looking for teachers that are super creative with their students and have really great bulletin boards. So whatever the leadership is looking for and the factors that are influencing them is going to influence the teachers. So these are things that you can find out beforehand. But the first thing that we're going to do is explore what we're looking for. So we're going to explore what we're looking for in a school, and then how to find out if the school has. So is this more of a traditional school where the learning is more rote, or is this like an experiential school that's more progressive, right? The type of curriculum that they use. Lesson planning structure. There are some schools where they will say to you, we expect you to plan your lessons, but we're not going to take lesson plans from you. You don't need to submit lesson plans. That's crazy. I've never actually seen a school that does that. I've heard of them. Most schools will ask you to submit your lesson plans every week. But also, you have to submit them. Are they going to be reviewed? I've worked at schools and heard of schools where you submit all of your lesson plans every week, and they get reviewed every week. Think about that's great for a new teacher to get that support and that feedback. It's a lot of work, right? So is that something that you want, or is that something that you don't want? The staff culture. So maybe this is the kind of school where teachers are always getting together on Friday night, or more than on Friday night, right? After work. Maybe this is, and this can mean a lot of things. It could mean, maybe it's a culture of complaint. Maybe I've worked at schools where the teachers constantly complain all the time. Is that the kind of environment that you want to work in? Or is it the type of school where teachers are really positive, really upbeat, and really driven by their mission? We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about it. Approach to student discipline. This is a huge one. So chances are that you have some pretty strong beliefs about how students should be disciplined. I'm just guessing most people do, especially because a lot of you are new teachers. I definitely had strong feelings about it in the beginning. They were wrong, but I definitely felt very strongly about certain things. If you want to make sure, this is one of the most important things, that the school at least somewhat aligns with your approach to student discipline. Meaning, if you just learned about restorative practices and you're fascinated by having conversations with students and getting them to internalize their behaviors and become better citizens, you might not want to work for a school that's extremely no-nonsense, that's like, the kids are silent all day, the kids are following directions all day, where the teacher is the one who's giving them, is basically where the teacher is telling them what to do and they're doing it. And there's a lot of schools that way. If you feel that way, don't work at a school that way. And same as vice versa, right? So these are all things that you can find out before you even interview at the school, and I'll explain how. And something that is similar, student structures and systems. So like, and this isn't even included in here, but what kind of programs do the kids have? Do they have art? Do they have music? Do they have after school? If they do, you're probably going to be asked to teach it, just which is, nobody's favorite, let's be honest. But, yeah. And school age, this is something that a lot of teachers also don't think about. If the school is already established and it's been around for 8+ years maybe, they're going to probably be more organized, probably have a better idea of the way that things should be run, and the staff may even be more satisfied because of that. If it's a new school, there are some benefits. So working at a relatively new school, you have a lot more say in what happens. You are going to learn a lot from the experience. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. there are some drawbacks. So if you're working at a relatively new school, chances are they're changing the curriculum. They do a curriculum for 1 year, maybe it doesn't work, right? And then they have to try a new curriculum. They're experimenting with different programs. The turnover rate can be a little bit higher. But like I said, there are some benefits. You have an opportunity to wear a lot of different hats. That's how I got into recruiting. It's because I was at a brand new school and they needed something. They're like, who's gonna do these phone screens? Because we can't do them. I was like, I'll do it. I'm just a teacher. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth.
Yeah, also you get to be, in a lot of case scenarios, classified as a founding teacher. So a founding member of the 7th grade team or even just of the school. And that says a lot for leadership.
Yes.
It's really nice to work too. Not that that's your feelings.
So in other words, when you're hearing all of these things, just start thinking about the things that sound appealing to you and the things that don't sound appealing to you. If you're a person who your priorities are like you want that work-life balance, right? And that's probably every person in this room, but if that's your priority right now, you probably shouldn't work at a brand new charter school, for example. My advice. And there's a lot more. So I think the next one is a question that you're gonna write down. So why does all this matter? You're just gonna jot down some ideas. Anything you wanna share out? We talked about this a little bit at the beginning. Anything else?
I would say ultimately because you need to work in a place where you feel comfortable in your own skin when you walk in every morning where you feel like you're in sync with what you're doing, where you work with people. It's very difficult to work and excel in a place where you feel like you're honest.
Definitely. You feel like you're not appreciated for who you are, right?
Also the application process, like you don't wanna, you wanna set yourself up for success. And you don't wanna go in and like teach a model lesson all wrong and say all the wrong things in your interview if you don't know like, what they want you to say.
Absolutely, and it's a huge waste of everybody's time, right? Anything else?
What do you feel that like supporting work aligns with your values as well?
Mm-hmm.
So especially with UC as a space that's more inclusive of students learning, so some schools you might feel that the opposite of education.
Definitely. Okay, anything else? Alright, so we'll go to the next section, which is I just want to show you retention data. Like, it's really interesting, yeah. So just what do you notice? Take a second, just read it if you can. Can you read that in the back? So this is factors teachers report as being very important for leaving teaching. So teachers that left teaching, this is what they considered was very important. These are the reasons that they left. The number one reason was dissatisfaction. And under that, which is probably not a surprise to you, but under that was accountability pressures, administrative support, and teaching conditions. Why do you think I wanted to show this to you?
We'll just go with it. Go with the flow. Dance a little bit.
You can see my awesome dancing skills. I can't dance without snapping. It's like a disability. I swear to God, I can't do it. I'm just every time I hear it, I'm like, I don't know. It's so uncool. Why didn't I show this to you?
Because that's all cultural stuff on top.
Right. This can be prevented. If you know and you research the school and you do your homework and you ask the right questions, you should be able to know that if the school is the right fit for you. This is all about school fit. Okay? Okay, so there's a video, and I'm very, very scared because this involves me opening up a window. Actually, no, sorry. The first part is a self-reflection. So you want to start thinking about, the first section we want to think about what we want. And then the second section, we're gonna start thinking about how to know whether the school has what we want, okay? So this is just self-reflection. You're gonna think about think about your dream school. You may not find it right away. Think about your dream school and what you are looking for in a school. This is number 2. Just jot down, it's just a free write, jot down as many ideas as you can think of, what you're looking for. Think about not just what this school has, but also the leadership, how you want to be treated.
Airplane and the nice talkative man in the middle seat. If I think someone is talkative, oh my God, they're so talkative. And he's telling me where he's going and what he's doing and what his business is. And he says, so what do you do, darling?
Oh, it's not a thing.
And I said, well, I'm a teacher. And now I work with the National Education.
Hold on a second. I guess you're right, yeah. All right, let's just listen then.
I was sitting on an airplane and the nice talkative man in the middle seat. If I think someone is talkative, oh my God, they're so talkative. And he's telling me where he's going and what his business is. And he says, so what do you do, darling? And I said, well, I'm a teacher, and now I work with the National Education Association. And he stopped smiling. And he said, I've heard about you people. He said, I hear you need this, and then I hear you need that, and then I hear you need something else. And to tell you the truth, darling, I'm getting tired of hearing it. I'm a businessman. I want you to bottom line it for me. I want you to tell me right now, what is the one single thing that would solve all of our problems in public schools? And I said, that's easy. What we really need are fewer people who think there's one single thing that would solve all of our problems in public schools. And you know, I wish I hadn't been so snotty to that guy, but it was fun. And here's the thing, he's not the enemy. Most people, their kids are grown and gone, or they never had kids. They don't walk into a neighborhood public school. I'm an educator. It's up to me to educate the man in the middle seat as much as to educate a politician about what happens in any given typical school on any given typical day. I mean, we serve kids a hot meal. We put Band-Aids on boo-boos. We diversify our curriculum and instruction to meet the personal and individual needs of all of our students, the blind, the hearing impaired, the physically challenged, the gifted and talented, the chronically targeted, and the medically annoying. We make sure that they've had their immunizations, make sure they understand disease control, teach them to resist drugs, alcohol, tobacco. We give career counseling, pregnancy counseling, mental health counseling. We get them on the bus safely. We take them off the bus safely. We provide computer instruction, sex education. We stop bullying, teach them to say, I'm sorry, and mean it. We instill an understanding of civil rights, the political process, challenge racism, foster social tolerance, and appreciation for our cultural and religious diversity. We teach the principles of free enterprise, how to be a good sport. We develop personal responsibility, practice bicycle safety, and check for headlights. We provide bilingual education, teach metrics, how to be a wise consumer, exercise weight control, how to drive a car. We teach the impact of wars, develop collaborative skills, how to tune a violin, how to use reason and evidence, protect the future. We teach them to revere their environment, how to manage their money, how to access information, how to make wise choices, how to balance the checkbook. We teach loyalty to the ideals of a democracy. We build patriotism, good oral hygiene, and respect for the worth and dignity of every individual. We nurture curiosity, encourage a good question, build self-esteem, and then we teach reading, writing, and arithmetic.
All right, take a second and just talk to your neighbor about how that made you feel, how that impacted you. Because we're going to choose one of those qualities and just go into more detail about it. And this is really just, like I said, this is really just a self-reflection so that you can figure out who you really are as a teacher and what's really important to you. Because if you don't know, then how are you going to know what to look for in a school, right? So just pick one of those 4 qualities, maybe the one that just stands out to you, the first one that you thought of, and go to the next question and just start to describe it. Maybe the ideal version, what it looks like in detail.
Can I give one other reason why this is important to do? Because you want, in the interview process, to be able to tell that school what is most important to you, and the fact that you see that happening at the school. If you've done the research about that thing that's most important to you, and you notice that that's true at that school, you want to say that in the interview process, so they know that like you're actively choosing them and why.
Definitely.
That kind of seals the deal. You're not just applying to any old school, ones that fit you.
So right now, just take 2 minutes and just write down just the ideal of that thing that's important to you. And then we'll share the part. So now that we explored who we are as teachers and what we want, now we know what to look for in a school, right? So now the next question is, how do we know what to look for in a school? Or how do we know that we're seeing what we want to see? Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to assess each prospective school in relation to your fit factors. All right, this is just basically a cheat sheet for the step-by-step process. Before the interview, you can create questions that are aligned to your priorities. So for example, if you feel very strongly about progressive curriculum, you can have 5 questions about curriculum. What curriculum do you use? How is it implemented? What was the data like last year? These are questions that are going to give you a lot of information about that. Know the school's background. So, I mean, this is sort of given, but research the school. Do a quick Google search. Inside schools will help you. Facebook, usually schools have a Facebook page, and sometimes parents even comment and post pictures. It gives you sort of a more accurate depiction sometimes of what the school is all about. And also, most schools have their own website. It's going to be an ideal version of the school, obviously. But you can still get a lot of information about it. If you look at the school's website, you can sometimes get their curriculum, what curriculum they use. Sometimes they even will provide like a list of the teachers. You can see things like what the student population. You can see what kind of programs they have, if they have music, if they have art. There's a lot of information you can get from their website. But just keep in mind that it's an ideal version of the school, okay? And then during the interview, so you have all your questions, right? You did all your research beforehand. You go into the interview, and you already have sort of an idea. So you know how to sort of tailor your questions and tailor your answers so that they make sense to fit the school, right?
Yeah, so there'll be a portion of the interview, usually, often towards the end, where they'll ask you a ton of questions the whole time, right? And then towards the end, they'll be like, okay, do you have any questions for us? The answer should always be yes. If you say no, then as we were talking earlier, it can come across as desperate, and also not super thoughtful. You want to make clear that you care about what the next school is that you're going to be committing to, because you want to be there long term. So showing that you did some homework first and that you actually have questions to ask them is important. Maybe not like 20 questions, but think of a solid 2 to 3.
Also, if they ask you or if they give you an opportunity to take a tour of the school, take it.
Say yes.
Say yes. It might be a self-guided tour. They might say, just feel free to walk around, do it. Take as much time as you can, yes.
And tell them the observation, a positive one. Afterwards, I noticed that your school has fantastic blah, blah, blah. Whatever it happens to be, throw them a compliment. They'll appreciate it.
It's also going to give you a ton of information. If you're able to tour a school while the students are in it, I mean, I can't even tell you how much information. Here's some things to look out for. This is like my little secret tricks. 1, what do the teachers look like? Are the teachers walking around with their heads down? Are they saying hi to you? Or are they walking around? Do they look flustered? I mean, that's a huge one. And there's teachers flustered everywhere you go, right? But if the teachers aren't even saying hi to you and you're a visitor in the school, they're pretty stressed out. And they're not trying to make you feel welcome. It's like their way of saying, don't work here. They're like, get out while you can. So you want teachers that seem sort of happy, sort of friendly. And not because you're working, not just because you're working with them, but also because it's an indicator of how you're going to feel when you're working there, right? You want you want the system to seem organized, so the interview process, if they're running 20 minutes behind, it's not a very good sign, right? If they're running 20 minutes behind for your interview, imagine what's gonna happen when you have a 50-minute prep and you're waiting outside the principal's office for a half hour, she's wasting your time, and you have a meeting with her. How frustrating that's gonna be, right?
Sometimes things happen, right?
Of
But are
course.
they apologetic about it?
Right.
In terms of being respectful of your time too? I think that makes a big difference.
It's not a red flag, it's a dark pink flag, I think, in my opinion. I just feel like if an interview is such a formal part of the process, it's just not a good sign at all. Hallways and classrooms, you want them to be neat. If everything is hyper organized, that's also kind of a red flag, because then that's obviously where their priorities are. But you don't want to be walking around seeing like garbage on the floor in the hallways and nobody's picking it up, right? Or you want to see that, I said this before, but bulletin boards that haven't been updated in 3 or 4 months, just usually a sign that people are really, really stressed out and they're in over their head, right? Another thing is how teachers are treating kids. I was talking about this before with these two over here. The way that teachers treat kids is not something that you think about, because you just assume that teachers are going to be nice to kids and that teachers are going to love children. You're like, oh, I didn't even write that down. I didn't even think of that. Oh, it's a factor. You'll go into schools where teachers look absolutely miserable and they're not nice to children at all. And if so, is that a place that you want to work, right? Any other red flags that you can think of? Or just things that
No, I mean,
you want to watch out for?
it's also thinking about that imbalance too, in the sense that, yes, there might be a school where that's the case, but that's also a school that needs teachers like you the most. You know, like that's a school where if kids are not really feeling loved and taken care of and, you know, all these other things, then they really need you. But balance it with everything else that's important to you. Think about like the full picture of the things that you value most.
Lauren is less selfish than me. Like, I'm not working at a place like that. I'll be miserable. Yeah, those are just some of the biggest things that I can think of. How long is this school day? Do teachers seem really, really tired? I worked at schools where the school day was 10 hours long and the teachers didn't seem really, really tired because they were really motivated and inspired because they had great leadership. Yeah, they were great and they were inspired by the leadership, by the mission. So those are just some of the factors to include.
Yeah, they're going to get paid a little bit more sometimes in those instances.
This has nothing to do with anything that's on this slide, but just as a side note, a lot of those schools tend to pay a lot more. So charter schools, some of the big networks, will pay like 15 to 20% more and to new teachers. I mean, when I started out at a large network, and I was getting paid like $15,000 more than I would have been paid at a district school.
So you just have to balance everything, right?
So, yeah.
Different priorities.
It depends on what your priorities are. I think I missed one. That's okay. Observe and take mental notes during the interview. Ask the questions about your priorities. Find the red flags already. I didn't cover it all. Okay. Very, very, very few people do this, and this is really super helpful. If after the interview, if you're on the fence, or actually even if you're not on the fence, even if you feel like it went really well, you're gonna get the offer and you're gonna take it, ask to speak to a current teacher. Why? Yeah, anything else?
They're choosing a teacher now. Yeah,
That's the thing. So they're choosing they're not gonna choose like the disgruntled, the teacher that feels like nobody listens to them and is always complaining. They're gonna choose like somebody like me who's like, oh, I'd love to talk to them, who's thirsty for advancement, So just keep that in mind, but you can also ask them questions. You can tell when they're lying. And they usually don't lie, they'll embellish a little bit and try to spin things, but ask to speak to a current teacher and ask them about your priorities.
And maybe even ask them, hey, are there any other colleagues of yours who maybe have been having a challenging experience at the school who I might be able to speak to?
That's a great
Let's
question.
hear what they say. They might say no, but whatever, they might say yes.
Or you could just say, can you tell me about a challenging experience that a teacher has had?
Definitely.
Right? Just think about whether or not the school aligns with you and who you want to be as a teacher. And keep in mind that it's probably not going to be a perfect fit. It probably won't be a perfect fit. But even if it has some of the things that you want, you can work around a lot of the other things.
Right, and especially if you're a newer teacher, this is a great opportunity that if you find that school wasn't an absolutely perfect fit in every single way, think about the fact that you can just learn from that experience about what is the next best fit school for you. There's always an opportunity there.
Definitely. I think I have a slide on that.
Sneaky.
No, but maybe I don't. I don't know. We'll talk about it if I don't. The other thing is, do you have new priorities? So maybe you went and visited a school and you're like, okay, I just realized that I also want school to be fun. Did you forget about that? Because I always forget about that. When you talk about your priorities, you're like, yeah, it's just a given. School should be fun. It seems like this is the wrong spot.
Yeah, that's a danger zone.
I finally figured it out on like day 2 at the end of the day. So you might go into a school and the kids are not enjoying themselves. They were miserable the whole time. They're falling asleep. They're angry. And you're like, okay, one of my new priorities is that I want school to be fun. And I want the school to value that. So you might have new priorities after the school visit. And also keep interviewing. Keep going on interviews. Even if you found your dream school, why? They might not accept you. What else? You might find a better dream school. What else? It's amazing. Did everyone hear her? Leverage. Ladies, sorry guys. Just because you do it already, it's been proven. Leverage. Especially if you go to, if you're working with a charter school or a private school, you can negotiate your salary. Isn't that crazy? And you should do it. And you can do it especially if you have an offer from another school. It makes it a lot more, it's easier to do too. You're like, well, I just got an offer, for X amount at this school, so I was hoping to get the same or more. Gives you leverage. Do it, negotiate your salary. Raise your hand if you've ever negotiated your salary.
But not in public schools.
In public school you can. In public school, I know, like all of that, and then it's like, no, yeah. But in charter schools you can, in private schools you can.
Public schools, but district
Right.
schools, yes.
District.
It can be.
Yeah.
But we have a blog article on that. Check it out.
Oh, we do we?
Yeah.
That's not one of mine. Okay, anything else with this?
Oh, the other thing is keep interviewing because that gives you interview practice.
Yes, you get better at it.
Sometimes it actually is a good idea. If you're not certain that one of the schools, maybe that you even connect with on our platform, is definitely going to be your dream school and they invite you to interview, still go on the interview. Because what if having that interview practice, 1, gives you more insight into what you definitely want next, but 2, you were able to get out that not so glamorous answer on the first school and get a little perspective on how you could say it differently for the next interview that you super care about. Say yes to the interview. I know it can be nerve-wracking, but the more you do it, the less it gets scary.
Definitely. Okay, I'll breeze through this. If you get an offer, salary and benefits, these are obvious things. Doesn't measure up to your priorities. Review your notes from the process that you took during the interview. And you can even make a pros and cons list. I have never found success with pros and cons lists, but a lot of other people do, just because they're weighted differently, each of the pros and cons. If you are, we already talked about this, but if you're on the fence and need more information, speak to the current staff, observe the school if you haven't already. These are musts before you accept an offer. These are absolute musts. If you have any concerns or anything that you're worried about, anything that stood out to you that was bothering you, talk to why not? Talk to leadership. They'd rather you do that than not take the job without speaking to them. I'll give you a quick example. If there's after school involved, if there's mandatory that you have to teach after school, and that's a big deal breaker for you, why not just talk to the principal and say, I can't do that, and just see what they say. If they say, well, you have to, then you can say, okay, I'm not accepting.
Yeah, there might be more wiggle room than they immediately suggest.
Yes. And you would do the
Or
same
right
thing.
person.
Yeah, you would do the same thing if you were a hiring manager, right? And just make sure you check with Inside Schools, Glassdoor, Facebook, just whatever, just Google them, and just whatever comes up on that school, read it and do your research. Don't ghost. This is the big takeaway from this slide. Do not ghost. Lauren, I know you have strong
Well, I have
feelings
to
about
kick you
ghosting.
off the platform. Look,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Don't do it.
Just if you're realizing, you know what, in retrospect, this isn't the strongest fit, just you can say something big, like, I'm sorry, but my plans have changed for next year, but you know, best of luck with the remainder of your search. Write something like that down, have it ready to go, and just tell them that. Like, it's just so much better. Here's the other thing. The education world, yes, we're in New York City. New York City is really big, but the education world is very, very small. Okay, particularly when it comes to the hiring managers and people in recruitment and whatnot, they end up switching different schools all the time. So you don't want them to remember that you happened to ghost them and never replied, you know, when they invited you to an interview or for the second round or what have you. Just, it takes 5 seconds to say what I had just said just now. I'm sorry, but I'm moving forward with a different opportunity, but thank you. That's it.
True story. This is actually kind of crazy, and I don't even know if you know this. So I had an interview with this charter school in Bedside 7 years ago, and I had a really positive experience with them. The hiring manager, the director of operations, we had been going back and forth about salary. I was negotiating my salary, and we had like a great conversation. I ended up not taking the job, but we had a good relationship. Years later, a friend, I had said that I wanted to do consulting, like what I'm doing now, and my friend of a friend was like, oh, I know somebody who does that, I'm gonna connect you with her. And it was her. She was like, I remember you, you were so great. I was like, thank you. And then she hooked me up with this job that I have now. That is a true story. So that is why that's why you don't ghost. That's why you don't ghost.
And also just like be a respectful human.
Yeah, just be a nice person also. The last thing, okay, this is the very last thing that I will say. If you don't find your dream job, which you might not, okay? It's likely that it's not gonna be the #1 school that you wanted to work. You can always have a positive experience at a school if you have the right mindset. So if you go into if you start the year off saying, no matter what, I'm gonna do what is best for my students, and I'm gonna become a better teacher this year. I'm gonna learn everything that I can, and I'm gonna be positive. You're gonna be totally fine, and you're gonna have a great year. But start looking, but get your resume updated, and start looking so that the next year you can have an even better year.
But we have privacy controls too, so if you
Oh,
want
yes.
to be able to start looking and you're still at a particular school, you can just add that school's name to a list that you'll never see, but you'll not be shown to that school.
Do you guys understand that? That's a super important part of selection. Yeah, because they can't say.
Principals don't like.
Oh yeah,
When
of
you're
course.
looking for.
Oh
That
yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. You do not want them to know. So we just have literally, it's like a button that you check, and then you write down the name of the school and you're invisible to
I
them.
mean, obviously stay, barring extreme case scenarios, I absolutely advocate for trying to stay for the full school year. It also
Yes.
doesn't look great on a resume if you ditch the school mid-year. That's definitely going to be a red flag on someone's resume. So you're going to want to make sure if that does happen, just make sure that you had a good reason that you can explain that in the interview process. But yeah, I mean, if you're sticking out the full year commitment that you committed to, then as the school year progresses, if you know that there's a possibility that there might be something that are out there that you can stay at as a career home long term, then yeah, you might as well check out what options could be a stronger fit. And maybe you'll find actually after speaking to several schools, the school that I'm at right now is actually better. Maybe you feel better about that choice ultimately. But that way you have a better sense to compare.
All right, that was a lot of information. We can take Q&A. We go to the next. This is basically what we just said. This is everything that I just said, so I'm not going to repeat it. Any questions? I know it's been a long night, guys. Thank you so much for coming. You were awesome. Thank you.